The air buzzed with soft laughter, clinking glasses, and the melodic hum of a string quartet. Candles flickered across tables dressed in ivory linens, casting golden light on the smiling faces of friends and family. The chandeliers overhead sparkled like stars, but none brighter than the woman at the center of it all. Leah stood at the far end of the aisle, a vision in a sleek, custom-designed gown that hugged her like a whisper. Her curls were pinned in a soft updo, a delicate veil trailing behind her like a sigh. Her eyes glistened, not with nerves, but with certainty. This was her moment. At the altar, Miles stood tall in a tailored tuxedo, his eyes never leaving hers. His smile said everything: pride, love, gratitude. A man completely and unapologetically in awe of the woman walking toward him. And somewhere near the back, just close enough to see but far enough to go unnoticed, stood Derek. His hands stayed buried in his pockets, his jaw tight. Around him, guests rose to their feet, turning to admire the bride. But Derek couldn't move. He was stuck, glued to the moment, to the weight in his chest, to the echo in his mind. Leah's gaze never wavered from Miles, but for a single beat, her eyes flicked toward the crowd. For half a second, she saw him. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She simply returned her gaze to the man who waited to make her his wife. Derek blinked, and a memory hit like a slap. Her eyes wide, hopeful, holding out a small velvet box on their apartment balcony. Derek, I know this is untraditional, but will you marry me? He hadn't even hesitated. Leah, come on. You're not wife material. We're not on the same level. You know that. He'd laughed afterward, tried to pass it off as honesty. She hadn't said a word. She'd just nodded slowly, stood up, and walked back inside. A week later, she was gone. Now, she was here, glowing, loved, chosen. The music swelled as she reached the altar, taking Miles's hands. The officiant began to speak, but Derek didn't hear the words. He turned, stepping quietly out the side door, the night swallowing him whole. Behind him, laughter erupted. A kiss was sealed, and Leah began her forever with someone who saw her worth the first time. Leah Green had always believed that love was about showing up for the other person, for the dreams you shared, for the life you were building together. At 28, she wasn't rich, but she was rich in spirit. Raised by a single mother who worked double shifts as a nurse, Leah had grown up in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in South Dallas, where everything was earned, nothing handed over. She carried that same work ethic into adulthood. By day, she stitched and sketched as an assistant designer at a mid-tier fashion house. By night, she worked on her own collection, saving every extra dollar to one day launch her own label. She was the kind of woman who packed handwritten notes in her boyfriend's lunch bag, who remembered birthdays, hated lies, and believed, stubbornly, naively, in people's potential. Then came Derek Matthews. They met at a networking mixer. He was all smooth smiles and sharp suits, a fast-talking investment manager with a resume that read like privilege. His confidence wasn't loud, it was composed, deliberate. He said things like, leverage the optics and realign the narrative, even over dinner. Leah found it oddly intoxicating. For 2 years, they were a picture of opposites attracting. She brought color and warmth to his sterile world. He opened doors to fancy dinners and luxury hotels she'd only seen on TV. She thought they were balancing each other out. When Derek lost his promotion and spent 2 months spiraling in doubt, it was Leah who cooked, who listened, who reminded him of his brilliance when he couldn't see it. When his father was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's, it was Leah who stood next to him at the hospital, who didn't flinch when the pain turned him cold and unreachable, but not everyone appreciated her presence. Vivian Matthews, Derek's impeccably dressed, diamond-wearing mother, made her distaste clear from day one. She's sweet, she once said with a practiced smile, but she doesn't understand our world. She's unrefined. Leah had overheard that. She said nothing, just smiled tighter, walked taller. Derek never defended her. Not really. He'd shake it off with phrases like, that's just my mum, or don't take it personally. But little by little, Leah felt her place in his life shrink. She was a placeholder, not a partner. Still, Leah held on. She believed love could break through class and coldness. She believed Derek loved her, just needed more time to see it. So, on their second anniversary, She went all in. She made his favorite meal, rosemary chicken, truffle risotto, and red velvet cake. She lit candles, played the playlist from their first road trip, and waited until he had a glass of wine in hand before pulling out the small velvet box. "I know this is untraditional," she'd said, smiling nervously, "but I know what I want, and it's you. Will you marry me?" Derek looked at her like she'd lost her mind, and then the words came, cold, precise, surgical. "We're just having fun, Leah. You're not the woman I see beside me at the top." That was all. He didn't try to soften it, didn't apologize, just shrugged as if she should have known better. Leah didn't cry, not in front of him. She simply nodded, stood, and began clearing the dishes. He offered to talk about it, maybe after dessert. She told him there wouldn't be dessert, or anything else. The next morning, she quit her job, moved out of their shared apartment, deleted every photo, blocked his number, changed her number. It was like she vanished, and she meant to, because something in her had cracked open that night. Not from heartbreak, but from clarity. She had loved him with her whole heart, and he had loved her just enough to keep her around, but never enough to truly see her. So she left, quietly, finally, without looking back. 3 years had a way of softening memories, but they also had a way of revealing truth. Leah Green no longer lived in the shadow of rejection. Atlanta had given her a fresh start. She walked with a new rhythm now, shoulders back, chin high, confidence stitched into every step. After leaving Dallas, she'd poured her pain into purpose. Her designs caught the attention of a mid-sized fashion tech brand specializing in smart wearables. Within 18 months, she went from sketching fabric swatches to leading an entire design division. "You took a broken heart and made it couture," her friend had once said. And then there was Miles. They met at a tech summit, introduced by a mutual colleague. He wasn't flashy, no rehearsed charm, just steady energy and warm eyes. He didn't ask what she could be. He saw what she already was. On their third date, he showed up with a notebook full of business resources. "You talk about launching your own line. Let's make a plan." He meant it. He always meant it. Leah hadn't expected to fall again, but Miles didn't ask her to shrink. He celebrated every version of her, messy, focused, quiet, bold. And over time, she learned what it felt like to be chosen, not tolerated. He proposed on a rooftop at sunset, a simple band and a promise. No games, no performance. Just you and me, building a future. She said yes with tears in her eyes. Meanwhile, in a downtown Dallas condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and no warmth, Derek Matthews poured himself another drink. On paper, he had everything. Senior VP title, 6-figure bonuses, imported suits, and an apartment that looked like a luxury catalogue. But his life was cold. Women came and went, none staying long enough to leave a toothbrush. Vivian kept arranging dinner dates with appropriate women, the daughters of lawyers, board members, real estate moguls. They laughed too hard, talked too much about networking. He felt nothing. Some nights, Derek would scroll through old photos, private moments never posted. Leah laughing in an oversized hoodie, Leah falling asleep with pins in her hand after sewing late, Leah dancing in the kitchen barefoot. He hadn't spoken her name in years, but he thought it all the time. Then one afternoon, waiting at the airport lounge, a magazine caught his eye. The former tailor taking over tech fashion. There she was, Leah Green, posed in a sleek red pantsuit, her curls bold and unapologetic. Beside her, arms around her waist, stood a man with dark skin and a wide, genuine smile. The caption, "Leah Green with fiancé Miles Dean, co-founder of Novatech." The jealousy was instant, but the regret cut deeper. She looked happy, not polite happy, not trying to prove a point happy. She looked free. He flipped the page, searching for a mention of himself. Nothing. He was a ghost in her story. The texts started that night. Derek, "Hey, been a while. Just saw your article. Congrats." Derek, "Would love to catch up sometime. Coffee?" Derek, "Leah." Nothing. Not even the grey read check. He tried calling once. Straight to voicemail. He almost left a message, but what would he say? That he was sorry, that she was right to leave, that he missed the version of himself that existed only when she was around. A few weeks later, over dinner with an old college friend, he heard the words that made his chest tighten. "She's getting married this fall. Big wedding in Atlanta. Guys loaded." Heard she's designing her own dress. Of course. Derek nodded slowly, hiding the storm behind his smirk. Good for her. But that night, he booked a flight. He didn't RSVP, didn't even ask permission. He just knew he had to see her. One last time. The first time she saw him again, really saw him, was outside her boutique on a Thursday afternoon. Atlanta's air was warm, gentle. She just stepped out with a garment bag in hand when she froze mid-step. Derek, standing there in a tailored coat and polished shoes, like he belonged in another life, like he had a right to still appear in hers. "Leah," he said, almost breathless. "Can we talk?" She didn't speak right away. She watched him with the kind of caution you give to a fire that once burned you badly. "I don't think there's anything to talk about," she finally said, her voice low, steady. "I just need a few minutes," he pleaded. "Please." Against her better judgment, she let him follow her inside. Her assistant stepped out quickly, sensing the shift in energy. Derek looked around at the space, clean lines, beautiful fabrics, walls filled with mood boards and sketches. "You built this?" "Yes," she replied curtly. He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "I owe you an apology for everything." Leah crossed her arms, expression unreadable. "I was young, arrogant, scared. You are the best thing I ever had, and I didn't see it because I was so busy chasing some image of success that didn't include happiness." She didn't blink. "You didn't break my heart, Derek. You crushed it. And then you walked away like it meant nothing." "I know," he said quietly. "That's what I regret the most. You were always enough. I was the one who wasn't." There was silence. Long, thick silence. "I'm getting married in a few weeks," she said finally. "To a man who saw my value from the start, who doesn't flinch when I speak my dreams aloud." "I know," Derek whispered. "I saw the article. That's when I realized I let go of someone who would have changed my life." She turned away. "Then you'll understand when I say this. I'm not that girl anymore, and you're not the man I'd say yes to now." He left quietly, but the storm he'd stirred lingered. That night, her phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Vivian Matthews. "Don't flatter yourself. You think marrying a tech boy makes you one of us. You're still just a glorified seamstress. Don't get carried away." Leah stared at the screen, bile rising in her throat. She blocked the number instantly, but stood there for a long time afterward, trembling, not with fear, but fury. She didn't tell Miles immediately. She didn't want to bring the past into their present, but Derek wasn't done. 2 days later, he showed up at her house. She was watering the garden in the late afternoon when he appeared at the gate. She didn't even know how he'd gotten the address. "Leah, please," he said. "I had to see you again." She dropped the hose. "You are trespassing. I know I messed up. I know I let you go, but I can't stop thinking about you, about us." "There is no us, Derek. You don't really love him," Derek pressed. "Not like what we had." The door opened behind them. Miles stood there, sleeves rolled up, calm as ever, but there was steel in his voice. "You need to leave," Derek turned. "You don't understand. You just came in after I did all the work." Miles stepped forward. She did the work, on herself. You just watched her glow from afar and thought you were owed something. Derek's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. "Leave," Miles repeated. Derek hesitated, then walked away without another word. Later that night, Leah sat on the floor of her walk-in closet, wedding sketches spread around her, eyes red and swollen. Miles knelt beside her. "Talk to me." She took a shaky breath. "I worked so hard to climb out of that place, Miles. That dark, hollow space he left me in. I questioned everything about myself, my worth, my voice, even the way I loved. I rebuilt who I was from scratch. And now he's back, and I'm scared." "Scared of him?" Miles asked gently. "No," she whispered. "Scared of how easily I can still feel that hurt. I thought I'd buried it." Miles wrapped his arms around her. "Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering with less pain. And you've done that. You've become someone new, but you're still allowed to feel shaken." She buried her face in his shoulder. "I just don't want any part of me to believe what he once said, that I wasn't enough." Miles tilted her chin. "You are enough, for this world, for your dreams, and for me, always." She nodded slowly, not entirely steady, but no longer falling. And that was enough for now. The soft clinking of glasses and gentle laughter filled the private garden of the rehearsal dinner venue. Twinkling lights floated above the long banquet table, where Leah sat in an ivory dress, glowing with quiet confidence. Friends and family toasted to love, resilience, and new beginnings. Miles reached for her hand under the table. "You okay?" She smiled. "Better than okay." Just then, the air shifted. A strange hush fell over the space. All eyes turned toward the entrance, where Derek Matthews stood in a dark suit, a small box in hand, uninvited and unwelcomed. Gasps rippled through the guests. Vivian trailed behind him, red-lipped and tense, clearly having tried and failed to stop him. Leah's breath hitched. Miles instinctively moved, but Leah gripped his wrist. "Let him speak." Derek stepped forward, his voice trembling but loud enough to be heard by all. "I know I shouldn't be here. I wasn't invited and I don't deserve a minute of your attention. But I need to say this before she says, 'I do.' I need to say it out loud." He looked around at the crowd, then straight at Leah. "I let fear ruin the only good thing I ever had. Leah, I still love you." A cold, complete silence descended. Forks stopped mid-air. A distant car alarm echoed like punctuation. "I was stupid," Derek continued. "Arrogant. I let my mother's voice drown out my own heart. I told myself you weren't enough because I was too ashamed to admit that I wasn't." He opened the small box. Inside was a necklace Leah once admired years ago in a tiny shop they'd passed on a rainy afternoon. He had remembered. That was the dagger. "I was planning to give this to you one day," he said. "I just thought I'd have more time." Miles stood slowly, his jaw tight. But Leah rose before he could speak. She turned to face Derek fully, her voice calm, but sharp, with precision. "You didn't love me," she said, her words slicing clean through the silence. "You loved control. You loved that I loved you without conditions. You mistook my loyalty for a lack of options." Derek's lips parted, but he said nothing. "You didn't see me, Derek. Not really. You saw what I lacked: status, pedigree, the right address. You never saw my ambition, my heart, my dreams. You saw inconvenience. He," she nodded to Miles, "saw all of me and chose me." Derek's face crumpled, like something in him collapsed under the weight of her truth. Vivian, red with embarrassment, stepped forward quickly. "That's enough, Derek. Let's go." But he didn't move. He just stood there, exposed. Every inch of power he once held now melted away. Miles walked over, not to confront, but to stand beside Leah, strong, still, unwavering. She looked at Derek one last time. "You should leave before the dessert. I hear it's sweet, but you wouldn't know what to do with something like that." The guests murmured quietly. No one laughed, but everyone understood. Vivian grabbed Derek's arm, and this time he let her drag him away. His shoulders hunched, pride gone, past slipping further out of reach with every step. Leah turned back to the table. For a moment, no one spoke. Then someone raised a glass. To seeing clearly, the room exhaled in relief and agreement. Miles wrapped his arm around her waist and whispered in her ear, "You didn't just walk away, you rose." And for the first time in years, Leah felt it. Not just survival, but triumph. The morning of the wedding was quiet and golden. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains of the bridal suite as Leah stood before the mirror, adjusting the pearl pin in her hair. There was no rush, no panic, only peace. Downstairs, Miles waited beneath a minimalist arch adorned with white orchids and eucalyptus. The guest list was small, people who had shown up for them, believed in them, rooted for them. Leah walked down the aisle, not with trembling fear or uncertain hope, but with the poise of a woman who had walked through fire and stitched herself back together. During the vows, Leah paused before her final words. She looked at Miles, then turned briefly to the guests. "This isn't just about love," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "It's about choosing someone who chooses you, loudly, fully, and without shame. It's about building a life where you are not minimized, corrected, or made to feel small. It's about being seen." Miles' eyes welled with tears. They exchanged rings. When they kissed, it wasn't theatrical. It was grounded, real, the kind of love that doesn't perform but remains. Just 2 blocks away, in a parked car, Derek sat with an unopened bouquet in his lap, white roses. The kind Leah once told him reminded her of home. He could hear faint music from the ceremony drifting through his open window. The passenger seat beside him was hauntingly empty. He didn't cry, he didn't rage. He just stared at the bouquet, then at the contact open on his phone, Leah G. With a final exhale, he hit delete. She wasn't a lesson. She wasn't a what if. She was the one that got away, and he had no one to blame but himself. 6 months later, the city buzzed with the launch of Scene, a bold, inclusive fashion line designed for women who were once overlooked. The colors were vibrant, the cuts were sharp, and the message was unmistakable. Every piece came with a stitched label. To the girl they said was too much or not enough. You were always enough. Now they'll see it too. Leah stood in her studio, watching a wall-sized screen display her designs in Times Square. Miles was there beside her, arms crossed, pride shining in his smile. But he didn't speak for her. He didn't stand in front of her. He stood beside her. Her name was on the building. Her voice was in the seams. And for the first time, the world didn't just look at her. It saw her. The sidewalk in front of her old apartment looked smaller than she remembered. The building, once heavy with heartbreak, now stood quietly in the morning light, just another place in the city's sprawl. Leah paused, her heels clicking to a stop on the familiar concrete. This was where she'd made the meal, where she'd rehearsed her proposal in the mirror, nervous and hopeful, where she'd stood, frozen, as Derek's words gutted her. She used to avoid this street, afraid of the ache it might bring. But now, she felt nothing but peace. She smiled, softly, not in sadness, not even in triumph, just closure, like exhaling something she'd held in for far too long. Just then, a teenage girl in a school uniform hesitated nearby, wide-eyed, hopeful. "Excuse me, are you Leah Green?" Leah turned, surprised. "Yes." The girl's face lit up. "My sister wants to be a designer because of you. She has your picture on her wall." Leah's smile widened as she bent down slightly. "Tell her she already is. She just has to keep showing up." The girl nodded eagerly, then ran off, phone in hand, no doubt typing out the moment in a flurry of emojis. Leah stood for another second, then turned, her heels beginning their rhythm again, each step lighter than the last. She walked toward the intersection. This time, the light was green. The street ahead, wide, sunlit. No more shadows, no more silence. Just forward. A quiet wind tugged at the hem of her coat. Her name lingered in the air. Leah Green. No longer whispered through heartbreak, but spoken with reverence. Voiceover. Sometimes, the love we begged for wasn't rejection. It was redirection to something louder, kinder, and entirely ours. Fade to black. Hi besties. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.